Welcome to Fundraising Growth Now, the podcast for arts and cultural organizations committed to building stronger donor relationships and raising more money. It's part of RSC Fundraising's educational offerings and is hosted by founder and CEO Bob Swaney. For additional insights and information, please join our mailing list at rscfundraising.com. Now, here's Bob with today's installment.
The Art of Building the Donor Pyramid. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. Today, I'm going to talk about the donor pyramid and how we're approaching potential changes to it, especially while arts organizations are still in patron recovery mode. Many of you will know what I mean when I say donor pyramid, but for those of you who don't, a donor pyramid is how an organization stacks the representation of its donors, from smallest donors to the largest donors. The pyramid refers to the idea that the largest number of donors give the smallest amount of total contributions, then the next largest in number give more than the previous amount, and so on, until you get to the top of the pyramid where it has a few donors giving at leadership levels. The common rule is that 20% of the donors give 80% of the money to make a solid pyramid. And then, of course, the converse is true also, where 80% of the donors give 20% of the money. That's been the rule, even with an arts organization that doesn't have the same ability to grow its base of affinity like, say, for instance, a large university might have, or any organization that can repeat loyalty on a much, much larger scale. Because affinity is more narrow, arts organizations have often struggled to have their donor base fit into the traditional pyramid shape. More often, the pyramid is instead shaped like an hourglass. With the donors, you have donors on top, you have donors on the bottom, and not nearly as many donors in the middle. It's risky to have an hourglass donor structure because it means donors aren't moving up or being retained at those middle levels. So practicing fundamental donor retention and stewardship, that actually helps mitigate the issue, but it's a long road, and it takes really laser focus over the long haul to get an arts organization into a healthy donor pyramid. Today's donor landscape has become even more challenging for the arts. Not only are the mid-categories suffering, but now the broad base of donors is showing signs of net erosion as well. Why? Mostly because the normal feeder system, consumers who haven't yet donated, has been on a trickle for the past 2 years. In the instance of the performing arts, we normally look at single ticket buyers or new subscribers to become entry-level donors. But of course, there have been tremendous limitations in that area since the pandemic, and most estimate that it will take 2 to 5 more years before traditional attendance numbers return. Therefore, low attendance figures could dramatically affect a stable, growing fundraising program and consequently, the donor pyramid. Now, I'm not going to ignore the influx of new donors during the pandemic. Patrons were very generous to allow their ticket money for canceled performances to be used for annual fund contributions. Our clients routinely saw six-figure swings in this area, which was really welcome, even if they got PPP and SVOG funds or not. But today is different. A good number of those donors didn't repeat their giving, and they don't plan to. They view their attendance as support of the organization, and they aren't wrong, but still, those decisions impact the donor base, especially at the lower gift levels. So you might ask, what's the big deal? Shouldn't we focus on major donors anyway? Well, of course we should, but study after study has revealed that most donors, even those who eventually reach the top of the pyramid, started their giving at much lower levels within the pyramid. And so to not pay attention to today's trends emerging at the bottom of the pyramid will eventually present problems at all levels, including the top. And so we have to pay attention to that now. So if the next few years look challenging with sourcing new donors, what can be done? My answer is that it's a combination of getting your messaging right, focusing on donors and prospects, and really going all in with long-term relationship development. It's a simple answer, but it's a lot of work, and we're going to take a look at these really one at a time. First, I'm going to talk about the messaging. One of the most important productive outcomes, I think, of the pandemic was the realization by most arts organizations that needs-based messaging became a low-leverage, low-return approach. And instead, using a value-based approach to messaging really grabbed the attention of the public, and it allows for the organization to shine instead of talk about its needs. So moving forward, attracting donors will be a matter of voicing true organizational value. It's not enough to talk about the volume of things that you do and then equate that volume into needing some level of support. Adding value, being aligned with community needs, being fully engaged in the community, those are the points that will win the donation and the long-term loyalty. A further upside to this is that your message can attract non-consumers of your organization. They may not engage with your products, they may not attend, they may not participate, but they believe in who you are and appreciate what you do for the community. This opens up the door for expanding the donor base and increasing that bottom of the donor pyramid. So I'll talk some now about the fundamentals themselves. If you know anything about my firm, then you know that we're committed to helping our clients employ the fundamentals of fundraising and relationship development. And while fundamentals can be enhanced and built upon, those core fundamentals really, they can't be neglected and they can't be replaced. So we're going to very briefly outline those fundamentals now, perhaps as a reminder for some listeners and maybe as new information to others. So what are these fundamental steps in building a successful program that leads to developing a well-formed donor pyramid? Here they are. First, have a plan. Next, create and define your value. Third, invest in money and people. Next, practice the core fundamentals. Next, ask for and follow up on your prospects. Sixth, steward all donor relationships at all levels. Finally, be patient. So we're going to take a look at these one at a time, and I'll give you some very quick comments about each. The first one, of course, is to have a plan. And I don't mean a big, involved, detailed plan. This is a tactical plan. It's not a strategic plan. This is about taking actions, getting results. So instead of a thick, complicated, cumbersome plan, instead, make an executable plan that is made for your organization in the here and now. And again, take an action, get a result. Creating a simple roadmap is best, based on 7 to 10 habits that you and your fundraising team can develop to create the most leverage in an environment of asking, giving, and stewarding. Next is create and define your value. We talked a little bit about that just a moment ago, but this information becomes your fundraising case statement. And right now, in today's world, it's not the normal checklist, just necessarily about who you are, what you do, why you do it, that litany of things that you kind of create to check off, rather, to create a really thoughtful development case for support. We have to take the last 2 years into account. So it's about the value that you offered during the pandemic. How have you realigned your organizational priorities or values with the emerging needs of your community now that hopefully the pandemic's coming to a close? Why are you valuable both right now, and why will you be valuable in the years to come? So working on that case statement and really defining value is how you'll create really high-level stories to tell. Next, investing in dollars and people. I think everyone's coming to the reckoning now that more of their revenue budget is going to come from fundraising. It did during the pandemic. It's going to keep being that way for some period of time. And so we have to invest in the resources. If we expect fundraising to do more, we're going to have to invest more. You'll have to invest in people, money, and time. So people, money, and time to become ultra effective and ultra efficient. This is a place where you just can't cheap out when there's this much writing on your annual operating budget. So you can count consultants like our company in there too. Good ones help you get better faster. If you do that, is designed to help you keep from making mistakes and to tighten up your efficiency. That's when you consider a group like that. But staff hiring, expanding the program, all those things, adding volunteers, really thinking about how much your organization is willing to invest in fundraising, because it is such a growing part of your organizational budget. Next on the list is practicing the core fundamentals. I would say don't try to be overly clever. Don't rely too much on technology. Remember the basics. People give to people. That's what works. It's what's always worked. And I hope that's what's always going to work. So focus mostly on individual donations. I'm not saying ignore institutional giving, but simply put, there are just more people than there are businesses. And the decision-making process with people is often much easier than it is with a large corporation. Next on this list is keeping donors. This is a core fundamental. How we talk about getting donors, but keeping donors is just as important to make this donor pyramid look the way that we want it to. It's simple in concept. It's often forgotten. If you've ever had a donor say to you, the only time I hear from you is when you're asking me for money, that's a pretty good tell that you have a problem, and you very likely need to double down on stewardship. Next on fundamentals is fundraise at least a little bit every day. Fundraising is not something you put on the shelf, take back off, put it back up, take it back off when you have time for it. Doing a little bit every day is what gives your program true momentum. Next in fundamentals is err on the side of asking. And that means by and of itself, look for reasons why people will give instead of looking for reasons why they won't. And you can really talk yourself out of making a quality ask because you're not ready. It has nothing to do with the donor not being ready. You're not ready. So the way that you combat that is you say, let's err on the side of asking. That's just a few of them. But I'll go into this next area, the asking and the follow-up. I can't go into all the nuances, but simply put, cultivate and ask prospects personally at the high end of the donor scale. And then at the lower scale, do it through direct mail, telefundraising, email, and maybe some of the platforms that are out there these days. Next on the asking and follow-up, do treat institutions. I said earlier, don't ignore the institutions, but treat institutions like people because they're represented by people. Build relationships with the right people. Don't look at it necessarily as a business-to-business relationship. It's full of people who you can connect with, talk through, negotiate with, have them become part of your family and your organization. But really treat institutions like people. Last on my list, on this very quick list, is that people are busy. Your job isn't done after you make the ask. And it really isn't even done if they say yes to you right away. But be willing to follow up. Be willing to not just make the ask, but be willing to follow up. Because they're busy. I know you're busy, whether you're a staff or a volunteer. But it's really on us. It's really on us as frontline fundraisers to do the follow-up. Last on my list is be patient. You have to grow your earned base, selling tickets or membership or events or educational offerings, whatever it is. You have to grow that, and it's going to take time. Your audiences and attendees, those folks are still finding their way too with all the changes and now going into recovery. And what does it mean? And did something change? I mean, it's going to take time. And so be patient with that group. And as they start to come back and help them continue to find ways to come back. Same with giving. Some folks are ready to give. Some are ready to give more. Some are not ready to give, maybe not as much. Maybe some of them came in, they went out. Being patient with that and looking for ways to keep donors and keep them engaged is going to be your key to success there. And last on this list is, bottom line, say it again, you just need to be patient. Don't abandon the fundamentals just because something didn't work right away. So in summary, put this information in place. These fundamentals are designed to help you identify, cultivate, solicit, and steward donors at all levels, and they provide a basic roadmap for your organization to develop repeatable disciplines for success. It'll help you attract, engage, and retain more donors, and it's going to be what drives your organization to develop and grow that lovely donor pyramid and having it form in the shape that you want it to year after year after year.
Thank you for listening to this edition of Fundraising Growth Now. For more information and to learn more about how RSC fundraising can help your arts organization raise more money, please visit our website at rscfundraising.com.